Today, I'm going to begin with showing a PowerPoint presentation, not authored by me, but worth looking at. This will reinforce the concepts about DC machines that we have gone through in the previous lecture. As you know, when we say machine, we mean either generator or motor. A lot of things are common, whether the machine is being operated as a generator or as a motor. Okay. Currently, the focus is DC machines. And as I was pointing out last time also, that although we are talking DC here, but reality is that we are generating AC and then converting it into DC. When the machine is used as a generator, the focus is slightly different compared to when the machine is used as a motor. This will hopefully become clearer as we move further. Yeah, I think I can skip that. As I said, DC machines are divided into generators and DC motors. Okay. And these machines are similar to AC machines, except that at the end, we use commutator to convert the AC into DC. That part will not be there when you're talking about AC machines. Okay. Nowadays, DC generators have become almost a rare commodity, but DC motors are very much around and very popular. However, we will go through DC generators also quite thoroughly because a lot of the things that we will do there will help us in understanding DC motors too. I'm just testing. Hello? I think I will come back. Give me 1 minute. Hello? Okay, I'm audible now. Good. Let me start all over. This is the one I was trying to show. I am only checking. Okay, so I think my voice is okay. So as I said, this PPT essentially summarizes a lot of things about DC machines that we have partially gone through already, but not fully. A DC generator is a machine, obviously, that converts mechanical rotational energy into electrical energy. And this electrical energy is in terms of DC voltage and DC current. The basic principle is simple enough. You rotate a loop of conducting wire at a fixed revolutions per minute in the presence of a magnetic field. And Faraday's law ensures that an EMF is generated across the two ends of the coil. That's the theory. Since the loop is rotating, you have to connect slip rings to it, and to them you connect brushes to pick up the EMF generated. In practice, you have a large number of loops rotating around the same axis, and they are housed on what we call a rotor. In a large number of slots. I had shown all this to you in my notes also, but here we have pictorial diagrams to illustrate the same point. Hello? Hello? Yeah, okay. It's there. Good. This is the construction in detail as far as the DC machine goes. A typical DC machine looks like this when opened up. The outermost part is the largest one, which is called stator, inside of which is used to mount the magnetic poles. The number of magnetic poles has to be even. And then the flux produced between north and south poles is cut by a large number of rotating conductors which are housed on the rotor, which is placed in the middle of the stator. Here the construction is showing by disassembling the machine. Stator alone is shown on the right hand side. No rotor is present there. All you see is the so-called field windings, which are used to produce north and south poles. Okay. The rotor has an outer part which is known as armature, where all the electrical action takes place. And the inner part is the mechanical part, which is driven by using rotational input from a turbine or some other source. The connection to the outside world is made through a commutator, which helps in making sure that you can use the machine with DC input in case of a motor and DC output in case of a generator. More details about how the rotor is connected to the commutator. You can see the slots on the rotor. They are slanted a bit for improving the efficiency of the entire construction. Each slot contains a coil which may be multi-turn coil in general. And the coil returns on the other side using another slot. And the ends of a coil are connected to a particular pair of segments on the commutator. Okay. Even if you don't fully understand the construction, at least this pictorial view will help you in understanding how these things will look if you open them up. This is a simplified illustration where we have only one pair of segments on the commutator. I had shown you last time in my notes that during one half cycle, the brush touches one particular segment, and during the next half cycle, it touches the other segment. So the polarity reversal, which is actually happening inside the machine, does not show up across the output of the brushes. The AC signal gets converted to unipolar signal using this so-called mechanical rectifier, which is called commutator. Brushes do not rotate, but they are connected to the rotating part. Lot of friction takes place, lot of temperature rise happens, etc., which has to be accounted for in designing and maintaining the machine. Okay. Now, last time I told you that there are two types of armature windings possible: lap winding and wave winding. Lap winding is used for machines which are going to work with low voltages and high currents. Okay. The windings in case of a lap wound armature are connected in parallel. This basically allows you to increase the current carrying capacity of the machine. As I told you last time, the number of parallel paths in case of a lap winding is equal to the number of poles. Wave windings are used when high voltages and low currents are being planned for. Here the windings are connected in series. A lot of detail here in terms of how the windings are connected, etc. I'm avoiding that. I'm giving you the basic idea of how these two types of windings are different from each other. In case of wave winding, the number of parallel paths is only 2. Other kinds are also possible, but I'll ignore them for now. Field windings are the ones which are used to increase the amount of flux produced by the poles. These windings are put on the poles themselves so that natural magnet is converted into electromagnet and gives you much higher value of the flux produced. Field windings can be in series with the armature winding or in parallel or partially in series and partially in parallel, which is known as compound winding. Okay, we have gone through all this in my notes also, so I'll quickly rush through it. By the way, horsepower is another unit for measuring power. 1 horsepower is about 746 watts. Lot of detail about field windings, practical detail. Maybe you don't want to look at everything in detail right now, so let's move on. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities in terms of how to connect windings with each other. And I was telling you all this last time also. Only thing is I missed frog leg, which I'm not going to talk about anyway. The field windings can be separately excited by using an external DC source, or they can be self-excited, which means you will be using the DC voltage produced by the generator itself. And the connection can be in series with the armature winding, in shunt with the armature winding, or partially in series and partially in shunt, which means compounded. Yes. Okay, this I think we have gone through several times. This is what I showed you last time, that a rotating loop produces an EMF. Okay, so same thing shown here. Fleming's right-hand rule is used to get the connection between direction of rotation and the nature of EMF produced, etc. We are not going to look too much into this right now. You know all these rules quite well. The nature of signal produced or nature of EMF produced is sinusoidal, and commutator makes it a unipolar signal. And then we use a large number of conductors to further smoothen the waveform, which I discussed last time as well. Okay. Quickly rush it through. A lot of theory, which I think you are reasonably familiar with by now. Yeah, this is the unipolar signal that comes out after the commutation takes place. Effect of adding more turns, that's what I showed you in my notes also. This essentially although they have not shown in detail, but this further smoothens the waveform. Okay, larger the number of conductor, the smoother is the waveform. That means closer it is to DC. Okay, now this is essentially a conceptual diagram on the right hand side here. 4 poles and in between rotating conductors. Motor is the opposite, and I'm not going to talk too much about it right now because we'll be talking about motor separately first. Equivalent circuit, etc. I have shown you already in my notes, so let me rush through this. For separately excited case, for shunt excited case, for series excited case, for compound wound excited case, the equivalent circuits are different. And their analysis is not difficult at all. One thing that we have to be mindful of, whether we are talking DC generators or DC motors, is the nature of losses. Some things are common to what we saw in case of transformers. Copper losses, that means the finite resistance of the armature windings and field windings will produce losses. I square R is the common equation to calculate those losses. On top of it, there will be iron losses in the rotor also, because rotor is containing a lot of magnetic material. And in addition to that, because of the rotation involved, there will be friction loss, and there may be other mechanical losses also, like windage, etc. So that is the part which was not seen in transformers. So the losses essentially are 3: copper loss, iron loss, and mechanical losses. As we solve more problems, we'll see these things coming back to us again and again. Efficiency, of course, is output power upon input power. In case of a generator, the output power is output power is electrical and input power is mechanical. In case of the motor, it's the other way around. Here they are showing these 3 losses in detail. Mechanical losses, of course, can be again, either windage loss or friction. Core losses are what were calling iron losses. So they have both hysteresis and eddy current component. And stray losses or miscellaneous losses, they can happen without us being aware of them, like unforeseen losses. Things can happen that were not planned for, like inaccuracies in modeling, etc., etc. So if nothing is given to you in terms of stray losses or miscellaneous losses, you ignore this completely. All the theories that we are developing for machines are not perfect, right? So losses will occur because of that also. Power flow diagram. Here they are showing a motor. So the input power is electrical and output power is mechanical. I'll come to all that in my own notes as well. Okay. I'm not going to discuss these solved examples right now because we are currently going to focus more on generators. Okay. One more document that I would like to share with you. Again, it's a long document. Author is not myself, obviously. It's Dr. Alvash. He has written a very nice document on DC machines. I will not be reading it through completely, but I'll show you broadly what it contains. An electrical generator is a machine which converts mechanical energy, in fact, mechanical rotational energy, let's put it this way, into electrical energy or power. Energy is power multiplied by time. Okay, so you can use both the words. Induced EMF is produced according to Faraday's law. We have gone through all this. Okay. Yeah, all this is known to you. Simple loop generator, I have already gone through it. This fellow is saying what we have already gone through. He is also telling you how to figure out the nature of EMF generated based on all these right-hand rule, etc. Okay. This diagram has been shown to you in previous documents also. Let's move forward. Construction. This also has been partially shown to you. But let's see if he has got any pictorial diagram. Left winding. Yeah, this is a diagram that shows left winding in detail. This is the simplest winding possible. Basically, two ends of a given coil are connected to adjacent segments on the commutator. That's the basic idea here. In case of wave winding, they are connected to segments a little further apart from each other. At least that much you can try to memorize, if nothing else. EMF equation I have already derived in my notes. Phi ZNP divided by 60A is the value of the EMF generated. He has also, I think, come to the same formula, but he's using slightly different notation. So don't use his equation, use mine. They are identical, of course. There's no difference. But you see, finally he is coming to phi ZNP divided by 60A. His symbols are slightly different from mine. He is using small n, where I was using capital N, and he is using small a, where I was using capital A. But otherwise, the equation is identical. And I am calling the EMF as EB. He is calling it EA. Okay. With those minor differences, you see the same equation here. Types of DC generators, obviously, one of them is that you use natural magnet only. Okay, and the remaining methods assume electromagnets, which means there are field windings present. In case of permanent magnets, there are no field windings. Okay, only the magnets are there, which are made of naturally available magnetic material. That method works only for small machines. For large machines, that method will not work. So for large machines, the field winding connection to the armature winding matters. If the field winding is not connected to armature winding at all and it is being fed independently, then we have what we call separately excited generator or separately excited machine. Because for motor also same thing happens. If you use the EMF generated from the machine itself to feed the field windings, then we call it self-excited connection. And that can be of three types: shunt wound, series wound, and compound wound. Okay. Enough repetition of the same thing. You will find that most of the things in this document are a repetition of what we have done. But it's good to look at a solved problem carefully. A 4-pole DC generator, obviously. He's not saying DC generator, but it is a DC generator. Having lap wound armature winding has 51 slots, each slot containing 20 conductors. So the total number of conductors is 51 multiplied by 20. What will be the voltage generated in the machine when driven at 1500 RPM, assuming that the flux per pole is 7 milliweber? And when he's saying voltage, he means EMF. That means it's an open circuited machine we are looking at. It's a straightforward application of the formula EB equal to phi ZNP divided by 60A. Phi is the flux per pole, which is 7 into 10 to the power minus 3 Weber. Z is the total number of conductors, which is 51 multiplied by 20. N is the RPM, which is 1500. P is 4. A is equal to P because it's a lap wound connection. So you can plug in all the values. That's what he has done. Now he's calling it EG. I prefer to call it EB, but the formula is what we know already. Phi ZNP divided by 60A. Z is 51 into 20. Total number of conductors is 1020. Number of parallel paths, capital A. He is calling it small a. I call it capital A in my notes. Number of parallel paths for lap winding is same as number of poles, which is 4. So A and P cancel out in this case. Phi is the flux per pole, which is 7 into 10 raised to the power minus 3 Weber. Plug in all the values. The EMF generated is going to be 178.5 volts, assuming there is no mistake in the calculations. Another one. A shunt generator delivers 450 amperes at 230 volt, and the resistance of the shunt field winding is 50 ohm, and the armature resistance is 0.03 ohm. Calculate the generated EMF. He has not drawn. Yeah, he has drawn the diagram, which is nice. Then it's easy to understand. This is the equivalent circuit. Okay. You have RA, which is the armature resistance, which is given as 0.03 ohm. That actually should have been shown in series with the two brushes, but he is writing it inside the circle. Fine. The total current drawn is 450 amperes, and the terminal voltage is 230 volt. The field current will be, because it's a shunt connection, the field current will be IF equal to 230 volt divided by 50 ohm, which turns out to be 4.6 ohm. field current will be armature current minus the load current. And he is calling load current as IL, which is given as 450 amperes. So armature current will be 450 ampere plus 4.6 ampere, which is 454.6 ampere. Now you apply KVL. So the EMF generated will be 230 volt plus IARA. That's it. It turns out to be 243.6 volts. Calculations are not difficult if you draw the equivalent circuit correctly. One more example, 8-pole DC shunt generator. It has got 778 wave connected. That means the number of parallel paths is only 2. It is running at 500 RPM. It supplies a load resistance of 12.5 ohm at a terminal voltage of 250 volts. So load current can be calculated from there. The armature resistance is given as 0.24 ohm and the field resistance is 250 ohm. Find the armature current, the induced EMF, and the flux per pole. I would strongly advise you to draw the equivalent circuit before doing anything. It helps in minimizing the confusion, especially during exams when you are under time pressure. It's a shunt connection, so field winding resistance will be in parallel with the armature. Okay. As in the previous problem, here also the equations are the same. IA will be IF plus IL. In my notes, I don't say IL, I say only I. The value of IL is 250 volt divided by load resistance, which is 250 volt divided by 12.5 ohm. Yes, so that is 20 amperes. That's load current. Field current will be 250 volt divided by 250 ohm, which is 1 ampere. The total of the two will give you the armature current. So it is 21 ampere. Hence, the EMF will be 250 plus IARA. So it turns out to be 255.04 volt. Okay. Now we know that EMF is given by this equation, phi ZNP divided by 60A. A is 2. So plug in all the values. You should be able to get the flux per pole from this equation. Okay. So we have found all the three things they wanted. There's a lot more. You can probably go through these yourself. Armature reaction is an undesired thing that happens in DC machines, even in AC machines. What happens is when armature rotates at a high speed, it generates its own flux because it is housing current carrying conductors. That flux counteracts the main flux produced by the poles, and it overall reduces the value of that original flux which was coming in from the poles on the stator. I will not give you too much mathematics on armature reaction. It's an undesirable phenomenon. There are ways to counter it, especially in large machines where its effect needs to be somehow reduced. Okay, at least be aware of this physical part of it. Now, a DC generator, even AC generators for that matter, are a DC generator is going to be characterized by these performance parameters. If you connect no load to the generator. Okay. Then the EMF generated will show across the output terminals because no current is flowing in the armature. Not in the, well, in the armature there is some current. Depending on the connection, there may be some current, yeah, but load current is not there. So losses are almost negligible. So almost the entire EMF will show up across the output. Now, if you increase the flux produced by the poles by increasing the field current going in, when the values of the field current are small, you will see almost a linear rise in the value of flux with the field current. But as field current goes higher and higher, the pole magnetic material starts saturating. And you will see that the flux is not increasing anymore, even though you are pumping in more field current. That is called saturation. So the value of field current the at which the increase in field current stops having serious effect on the voltage is what is captured in the no load saturation characteristic of the generator. And it is probably going to be studied for all kinds of machines, whether they are separately excited or self-excited. Also, the EMF generated versus the armature current, that could be a very interesting thing to study for a given DC generator. And then, of course, load voltage versus load current. That's the third one. These three are probably the most important electrical characteristics of a DC generator. I've gone through separately excited and self-excited cases in my notes, so I'm not going to go through these. My equivalent circuits are almost what he's showing here. But keep this document as a reference in case you're not sure about something. It's a big document. And I'll probably come back to it when time permits. I may come back to specific pages of it, not everything. Okay. And I think there is a second part of the document which we are not going to go through right now because that focuses on motors. But let me at least get to the end of what he talks about. Yeah, DC machine losses. We have already seen that there are three kinds of losses. He's repeating the same story. On top of it, the fourth one, which I was telling you last time about, is the contact loss because of brushes. If nothing is given, you assume that brushes have no losses. But in general, brush contact with the rotating part produces some voltage drop. That is an additional loss as well. And other three are what we have already discussed in the previous document. Copper loss, iron loss, and mechanical losses. A lot of these losses produce heat that has to be accounted for in designing the overall structure housing the machine. If machine is getting too hot, you may have to think about providing sufficient cooling to it as well. Again, that is more critical when large powers are involved. The biggest contributor to heat is copper loss, for sure. The windings, especially armature windings, start getting too hot because armature current drawn is generally much higher for a large number of industrial applications. But field windings also may have sufficiently large current and they may also get hot. So temperature has to be handled very carefully in the entire design. That's why mechanical engineers play a very important role in designing, maintaining, and operating these machines. The rotor has iron loss also. We can call it core loss also, as we did for transformers. And that may also play some role in reducing temperature. But generally, it's not that high compared to copper losses. And friction, by the way, can be high also. The brushes themselves can see a lot of wear and tear because of friction and the associated temperature rise. That's why I was telling you last time that except the part which actually touches the rotating rings, the rest of the brushes are made of copper, or sorry, made of carbon, which has less effect of temperature on it compared to copper. So this is a summary of all the losses in a typical DC machine. Efficiency, I have already told you about. It is output power divided by input power and the result multiplied by 100. We will be doing numerical calculations on that soon. Okay, there are some numerical problems here. I will probably avoid them. I'll go to my own. Yeah, DC motors I'm not going to discuss today, but this document also is going to be useful if you keep it with you. Okay, I know. Major document. Okay, now let me look at some solved problems, the kind of problems that you expect in quizzes and exams. Last time also I was looking at some solved problems, and today may see some repetition of them, but bear with it, okay? You don't need to memorize anything really, except that equation EB equal to phi ZNP divided by 60A. I don't think you, and the fact that for wave bound connection, A is 2, and for lap bound connection, A is P. That's all you have to remember. Everything else is based on common sense once you draw the equivalent circuit correctly. A 50 kilowatt, 250 volt, 600 RPM, separately excited DC generator has armature resistance of 0.05 ohm. The generator supplies the rated load at its rated voltage. That means 50 kilowatt divided by 250 volt will give you the total load current. 50 kilowatt is 250 volt multiplied by the load current, right? It's DC, no power factor involved. Power factor is 1 actually. So load current is easy to calculate. 50,000 divided by 250. And the result will be in amperes. The field winding has a resistance of 100 ohm and it is connected to a 200 volt source. So the field current will be 2 amperes, right? That's also easy to figure out. Rotational loss, which is the mechanical loss essentially, is 5 kilowatt. Okay, now the job is to calculate the efficiency, the applied torque. I'll come to the concept of torque in a minute, and the voltage regulation. The very first thing to do is to draw the equivalent circuit carefully. It's a separately excited case. So I'm showing field windings separately, totally independent from the rest of the system. VF is the applied DC voltage to the field windings. Its value is 200 volts. RF is the resistance of the field windings. The value is 100 ohm. So IF, the field current will be 2 amperes. That's obvious, right? Now, for the armature side, we are showing the back EMF in the circle. I'm calling it EB. Then armature resistance, which is also given as 0.05 ohm. And after that, the terminal voltage, which I'm calling V. In many books and in many documents, you'll see they call it VL or VT. And load current, I am designating as I, not IL or IT. Now, the first question is efficiency. So you need to figure out output power and input power. Output power is obviously 50 kilowatt. It's given to you that machine is operating at its rated load. These are the values pointed out here again. IF, I've already told you, will be 2 amperes. And by the way, the load current, which is also equal to armature current in this case, because field current is totally independent. So that current will be 50,000 divided by 250 amperes, which works out to 200 amperes. Now efficiency. Output power is 50,000 watt, right? Now the job is to figure out losses and add them to output power so that you get input power. And then you take the ratio of the output power and input power. Now losses essentially means copper losses, and nothing is given about iron losses. So let's ignore iron losses. Let's assume that iron losses are 0. But mechanical losses are given. They are not 0. They are 5,000 watt. So what you do is you calculate copper loss, which means Ia square Ra plus If square Rf. And to that you add 5,000 watt, which is the mechanical loss. That will be the total loss. This is the equation. P loss, the total loss power will be Ia square Ra plus If square Rf plus rotational loss. Plus iron loss if we were given some value. But we have not been given any value, so let's assume it's not there. Do the calculation. Ia is 200 amperes, right? So 200 into 200 multiplied by Ra. Ra is very small, I think, 0.05 ohm. You would get, I think, 2000 watt. And then If square Rf, If is 2 ampere, 2 into 2 is 4, multiplied by Rf, Rf is 100. So this is 400 watt, yes. And then 5000 watt is the mechanical loss. So the total loss is 7400 watt and output power is 50,000 watt. So input power will be 50,000 watt plus 7400 watt. Common sense, you know. So 57,400 watt is the input power. Now take the ratio. 50,000 divided by 57,400 and multiply the result by 100. You get around 87.11% efficiency. What is part B? Part B is torque. Torque, if you recall from your physics days, is the concept of action at a distance. In case of rotary systems, torque is a very useful quantity to know. And without giving you too much theory, let me tell you that torque is measured in Newton meter and it is obtained by dividing a given power, given rotary mechanical power, by the value of omega. Omega is 2 pi n divided by 60. I've done that previously. So torque calculation is based on power calculation and the RPM that you're looking at. The applied torque, that means input torque. So you look at the input power, which is 57,400 watt, and divided by omega to get the input torque. And omega is 2 pi n divided by 60. I had proven it last time. And n is the RPM involved, which is given as 600. So you calculate omega first by using this equation. It turns out to be 20 pi radian per second. Then input torque will be simply input power divided by omega. And the units are Newton meter. So your answer turns out to be 913.55 Newton meter approximately. Now, the last part of this problem is voltage regulation. Voltage regulation is open circuit voltage across the output terminals minus full load voltage divided by full load voltage and the entire thing multiplied by 100 if you want the result in percentage. So we need open circuit voltage first, which means EB, the back EMF. That is very easy to figure out based on the equivalent circuit. EB is V plus IARA or IRA if you want. Common conclusion based on KVL, right? So let me add V and IARA or IRA. I and IA are the same in this case anyway. So 200 multiplied by 0.05 and to that you add 250 to get EB in volts. EB turns out to be 260 volts. So percentage voltage regulation will be 260 minus 250 divided by 250 and then multiply the result by 100. So it turns out to be 4%. This is how you handle these calculations. Okay. Second question in this document is here. A 4-pole DC shunt generator with a shunt field resistance, which is going to be denoted by RF. That value is 100 ohm. And an armature resistance, which we denote by RA. The value is 1 ohm. It has 400 conductors. Capital Z is 400 and it is lap connected armature. So capital A, the parallel paths, the number of parallel paths is 2. Is P, is equal to 4 actually. The flux per pole is 20 milliweber. So 20 multiplied by 10 raised to the power minus 3 Weber. The rotational loss is also given as 500 watt. If a load resistance of 10 ohm is connected across the armature and the generator is driven at 1200 RPM, compute A, the terminal voltage, B, the efficiency, and C, the voltage regulation. Three different parts. The first thing to do is calculate back EMF, EB, based on all the information given to you. EB is phi ZNP divided by 60A. You plug in the values. Phi is 20 milliweber rather. So 20 into 10 raised to the power minus 3, which gives you 0.02. Z is 400, N is 1200 RPM, P is 4, A is also 4. Plug in all the values, you get EB equal to 160 volts. That's step number 1. Now look at field current. It's a shunt connected generator. So field current will be V divided by RF. Okay. Now, what will be V? Good question. V will be EB minus IARA. But you don't know IA. Let's see what happens. IF is V upon RF, right? This is a little complicated problem. So you have to look at it very carefully. IF is V upon RF, that's for sure. And V is EB minus IARA. So equation 1 is correct. IA is I plus IF, that is also correct based on the equivalent circuit here. Okay, that's number 2 equation. Now, problem is we do not know IA and I. In fact, we do not even know IF. The only thing we know is EB. And we know RA and RF for sure. So it needs a bit of mathematical jugglery to get to the answers by suitably manipulating these equations, which are derived directly from the equivalent circuit. Let's see how we handle this. Equation 1 and 2 definitely are correct. Now what I do is, in equation 2 on the right hand side, I put the value of I as V divided by RL. RL is the load resistance which is given to you actually. And V is EB minus IARA. That is also clear. And the second term on the right hand side of equation 2 is IF, which is EB minus IARA upon RF. That also is there in equation 1. So IA becomes given by equation 3. EB minus IARA comes out on the right hand side, and the remaining term is RF plus RL divided by RFRL. So this equation can be further manipulated to calculate IA in terms of EB and the resistances. Double check my derivation carefully. IA turns out to be EB divided by RA plus RFRL upon RF plus RL. And then you plug in all the values given to you. EB is known to you, all the resistances, RA, RFRL are known to you. Plug in the values. The armature current turns out to be 15.86 amperes. After that, things are simple. Once IA is known, V is easily calculated as 144.14 volts. Output power is VI, right? So you need I, and I is IA minus IF. And V is also known to you. So plug in all the values here. Output power turns out to be 2078.3 watt. What do they want? Let's go back. Yeah, terminal voltage we have calculated. Efficiency, okay. For that we need output power and input power. So I get output power calculated. You will have to look at it very carefully once you get the document. Output power is going to be almost 2078.3 watt. Input power will be output power plus losses. And losses means mechanical losses or rotational losses plus IA square RA plus IF square RF. Mechanical losses are 500 watt. RA, RF are both known. IA and IF are also both known. So you can plug in all the values to get the total loss in watts. Okay. The output power is 2078.3 watt plus 500 watt is the mechanical loss plus copper losses separately for both the windings are calculated here. You can check my calculations. So the input power turns out to be 3037.6 watt. And after that, you take the ratio, P out upon P in, and multiply by 100. So efficiency turns out to be 68.42% approximately. Okay. Now the last thing they want is voltage regulation. Yes, that's not difficult. Open circuit voltage will be simply EB, which is 160 volt. Full load voltage will be V, which is also calculated as 144.14 volt. So take the difference, divide the difference by 144.14 and multiply the result by 100. 11% approximately is the answer for voltage regulation. It's a bit tricky problem because you have to manipulate the equations. More than one unknowns are involved. See, next one. This probably will be the last one for today. A 25 kilowatt, 125 volt, separately excited DC machine. Well, I suppose it's DC generator because they are giving you volts, etc. Is separately excited and it is operated at a constant speed of 3000 RPM with a constant field current such that the open circuit armature voltage is 125 volt. Yeah, it's a generator for sure. The machine is observed to be acting as a generator. Okay, yeah, now they are telling you. With a terminal voltage of 124 volt. So I guess back EMF is 125 volt and actual voltage out is 124 volt. And the terminal power, that means load power is 24 kilowatt. So load current can be easily calculated by dividing 24,000 with 124. The armature resistance is 0.02 ohm. Calculate the speed of the generator. Okay, that's the question. Let's see. First thing is notice what kind of excitation is there. It's a separately excited machine. So field winding has to be shown separately with its own input voltage. EB is 125 volt, V is 124 volt, RA is 0.02 ohm. This is given to you. And this equivalent circuit was used in some previous problem also. We know that, right? Now, how do you solve the problem? I started in a wrong way, so I deleted that. We know that EB is 5 ZNP divided by 60A. Okay. Now, EB is given as 125 volt. But phi and Z and A and number of poles are not given. But it is shown, it is given rather in the beginning that the speed is 3000 RPM. I think it's given. Let me double check. Yeah, 3000 RPM. So the remaining factor, which you don't need to know individually, like you don't need to know Z, P, A, etc. separately. For a given machine, they are all constant anyway. Once the machine has been built, Z will not change, P will not change, A will not change. It is called a machine constant. And even flux, I'm assuming that, let's say it's not changing, suppose. Then phi ZP divided by 60A can be calculated from this given information as 1 divided by 24. This was the case to begin with when it was generating 125 volt and nothing was connected. Now the machine is loaded and it shows a terminal voltage of 124 volt and an output power of 24 kilowatt. That's the second case. So the load current, which is same as armature current, is 24,000 divided by 124 amperes. It turns out to be 193.55 volts. Something has been missed in scanning, but you can see it's sorry, not volts, amperes. 193.55 amperes is the load current. So EB in this case will be 124 plus IARA. RA is given, so EB turns out to be 127.87 volt in the loaded case. While in the unloaded case, EB was 125 volts. So speed will change a little bit. When EB was 125 volt, we had 3000 RPM speed. Now when EB goes up to 127.87 volts, speed will go up a little bit. And that is where we'll have to use this equation along with the known value of this constant phi ZP divided by 60A. Phi ZP divided by 60A is not going to change in case 2 because it is the same machine. But N will be different. And EB is given in the second case as 127.87. So you say 127.87, sorry, 127.82, I think it is, not 87. 127.82 equal to phi ZP divided by 60A into the new value of N, which I am calling N in case 2. And phi ZP divided by 60A is already known from the case 1 calculation as 1 divided by 24. So you plug in that value, you get the new speed as 3068.9 RPM, of course. A bit of mathematical manipulation of known things. Okay, let me look at this also carefully and then we'll stop. Question 2 says a 4-pole DC generator has a wave-wound armature with 792 conductors. The flux per pole is 0.0121 Weber. Determine the speed at which the generator should run to generate 240 volt at no load. It's a simple calculation. 240 volt is the value of EB and everything else is given to you. Phi is given. In fact, your objective is to calculate the speed. So you reshape the equation as N equal to 60 AEB divided by phi ZB. Then you plug in all the value. It's a wave-wound generator, so A has to be 2. 60 into 2, EB is 240 volt divided by phi, which is 0.0121 Weber, and the total number of conductors is 792 and number of poles is 4. So plug in all the values. The speed value turns out to be 751.3 RPM approximately. Question 3. A DC generator, when driven at 1000 RPM with a flux per pole of 0.02 Weber, produces an EMF of 200 volts. If the speed is increased to 1100 RPM and the flux per pole is reduced to this new value, 0.019 Weber, what will be the new value of EMF? It is again a reasonably straightforward application of the same equation. In case 1, let's say it's EB1 and N1. In case 2, let's say it's EB2 and N2. Everything else, of course, phi 1 and phi 2 will also be different in both cases because flux has been reduced in the second case. Phi 1 is 0.02 Weber, phi 2 is 0.019 Weber. Z will not change in both cases, it's the same machine. N is N1 in one case, N2 is the other case, and N1 is given as 1100 RPM, N2 is the unknown. P will not change, so we'll maintain it as it is. A is also not going to change. So essentially you take the ratio of EB2 and EB1 and it simply turns out to be phi 2 N2 divided by phi 1 N1. And phi 2 is 0.019 Weber, phi 1 is 0.02 Weber, N2 is 1100 RPM, N1 is 1000 RPM. So EB2 divided by EB1 turns out to be 1.045 approximately. And EB1 is given as 200 volts. So EB2 will be 1.045 into 200 volts. A simple problem using the same equation 2 times. and taking the ratio. Okay. Last one, I think, let me finish it for today. Last one is a shunt DC generator delivers 450 amperes at 230 volt and has RA, armature resistance, equal to 0.03 ohm, field resistance equal to 50 ohm. Calculate the generated EMF assuming lossless brushes and voltage drop of 1 volt per brush. First thing is to draw the equivalent circuit carefully. It's a shunt connection, right? So field windings have to be in parallel with the armature. Field current is IF, load current is I, armature current is IA. Values of RA and RF are given to us. Okay. V is also given as 230 volt. I is also given as 450 amperes. Our job is to calculate EMF. So first thing you do is calculate IF, which is V divided by RF, which is 4.6 amperes. I think we solved this in the previous document also, but let's go through it again. IA will be IF plus I, so it's 454.6 amperes. EB will be V plus IAR. The answer is 243.64 volt. In part A, we are assuming that brushes have no voltage drop. They are lossless. In part B, we are supposed to assume that each brush drops 1 volt because of the contact losses. So in part B, the calculations will be almost the same except at the end. EB will be V plus IARA plus 1 volt because of the brush number 1 plus 1 volt because of the brush number 2. So EB will be V plus IARA plus 2 volt. EB has to be a little higher in this case to take care of the losses in the brushes rather. So the answer will be 245.64 volts in the second case. That's it. This has to be done manually. There's no equation. You know the value of voltage drop due to brushes, and that is given as value per brush. So for 2 brushes, you'll have a total drop of 2 volt. That has to be added to the calculation to get the actual EB, which will be required if we want to compensate for brush contact